You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.
Welcome to Smart Sex, Smart Love, where talking about sex goes beyond the taboos and talking about love goes beyond the honeymoon. I'm Dr. Joe Court. Thanks for tuning in. Hello, and welcome back to Smart Sex, Smart Love. On this episode, I'm talking about somatic psychotherapy and how it relates to sex therapy with my guest, Charon Normand-Widmer. Charon is a licensed master's clinical social worker, and she works with me at the Center for Relationship and Sexual Health right here in Royal Oak, Michigan. She specializes in working with individuals seeking support navigating erotic, gender, and sexual identity challenges, alternative relationships, and trauma, utilizing a strength-based, psychodynamic, mindfulness-based approach. Charon uses somatic therapy to help individuals learn to self-regulate. But what is somatic psychotherapy, and how is this therapy helpful for couples and individuals? Let's find out. Today we're talking with Charon. Hi, Charon.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad you came on. And so with people, so that they know, you started out with us. Well, really, you came in to our presentations in the beginning. I was doing those meetups, and right, you used to come in with your husband, and sometimes I think you came by yourself too, didn't you?
Yes, I was adventurous.
Yeah, you were. And then you were a student at Wayne State University in the Master's in Social Work, and we talked about having you come aboard, which you did as a student, and now you're one of our clinicians.
Yes, my life's dream.
No, I'm so glad, and we're so happy to have you. And very happy, in fact, for me as well, because I really don't know a lot myself about somatic therapy. So I'm hoping that you could start us out with telling us just what is it in its basic terms.
Okay. Well, if we look at the word soma, its root means the body. So somatic psychotherapy is really looking at combining the body and mind experience. So I like to say it's a holistic therapeutic approach that incorporates a person's mind, body, spirit, and emotion in a healing journey.
Okay. So can you say more, like if someone came in with depression, let's say, or even anxiety, what might you, how would you use somatic therapy?
Oh, okay. So initially, it's always great to let the person, what I like to do or have them do is tell their story. So just tell me what's going on with them, what brought them into the session. And then when we begin utilizing somatic therapy, I invite the client to begin paying attention to the sensations that's going on in their body. For example, if they're telling me a certain situation that triggered an anxiety attack or something along those lines, as they recount the situation, I'll begin to invite them to pay attention to where they're experiencing tension in the body. And, people tend to say their heart is beating fast, but over time, I start to bring awareness to, maybe your neck is tight or your palms are sweaty. So it's about gently directing the attention to the body so that the client can begin to learn how to track their own responses and raise awareness to their reactions in certain situations.
That's great to know. And really that it's helpful, right? Because people lose a sense around or connection to their bodies as they get busier and busier with life, don't they?
That's correct.
And so, okay, so then they tell you, so I'd be sitting there and I would tell you, I feel it. Like for me, my stress or my somatic ways that I manage my stress or my moods are in my head. I feel like I have a band around my head. What would I do with that if you were working with me somatically?
Oh, okay. Well, sometimes I do use some visualization, and I love the fact that you said it feels like a band. Sometimes clients can't. You find language around what they're feeling, so we might help them to get there. But then once they do have this language, we'll say perhaps let's give this band a texture, or maybe we'll measure on a scale of 1 to 10 how tight it feels for them. And then we might incorporate some deeper breathing techniques. And then while they're breathing deeper, maybe paying attention, maybe that band starts to go down from, say, a 7 or 8 to maybe a 5 or a 6. And by utilizing the body and the sensations, we're building awareness so that they can take this technique perhaps home or to the office, so that when they feel this tight band, they can remember to breathe and then track the sensations of this band if it starts to recede.
That makes so much sense. And I have to say, I've talked with you since you started here, but doing this podcast, your voice is so soothing. I don't think I've ever noticed. It's relaxed, and I'm not, I talk fast. I'm like, okay, so as a therapist, I might slow down, but in general, I think I still talk fast. So I can imagine someone would feel very comfortable sitting there listening to you.
Well, that's the goal. I do think that breathing as well as paying attention to one's tonality can go a long way in setting the mood so that a client can feel, oh, this is a safe space. I can begin to relax here.
How does it relate? Because I know you do sex therapy as well. How does it relate to someone coming in for a sexual issue?
So again, I like the person to tell me their story. And then I might initially begin to have them pay attention to what's going on with their body while they're telling the story. But as we look at whatever sexual issues brought them in, I begin to, I'm trying to think of an example of, I do work a lot with the LGBT community. And so a lot of times what comes up is anxiety or issues around what I call minority stress. So we start looking at how their body reacts in situations where they might feel challenged related to their identity. Or something along those lines.
Okay, that makes sense. And I think it's important for people to know too. When people hear sex therapy, and then they hear somatic therapy, where they're talking about body, people get confused that we're touching clients, and it's so important that we tell people that's not what this is.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's easy to do in the time of COVID since we're doing teletherapy, but it's important that even when we're working in the office, when we're saying we're doing somatic therapy, it's really about raising the individual's awareness about their own body sensations. And sometimes I use mindfulness. Mindfulness as helping the person to accept various situations without judgment. So helping a person to understand their own reactions to different situations. Help perhaps raising their awareness around their intentions, about why they came to seek help. And mindfulness also allows someone to pay attention to certain attitudes. So their own attitudes around curiosity, acceptance, and kindness. So I offer this to say that this is all their internal work. There's no touching going on.
Right. So that's very, very helpful. And then you brought up mindfulness too. That's used often with somatic therapy. Is that right?
Absolutely. Because as a person begins to raise awareness around their own body sensations, we're seeking to raise clarity around different issues, and paying attention or raising awareness around one's own attention is so helpful in helping the individual, as I mentioned, gain clarity around what it is that they're actually seeking help for.
And how do you use it with like a couple? If two people are in.
Are we talking about mindfulness?
Mindfulness, somatic therapy. Yeah. So they come in and the client knows you do somatic, they know you do mindfulness, and they're struggling with couples issues that feel insurmountable.
Right. Oh, this is a great question. Because as a couple is talking, or let's say an individual in the couple session is talking, I will have the one who's not speaking begin to draw attention to their own body reactions while their partner talks. So, from a viewer's standpoint, I can look and see if a partner's arms are crossed, or if their legs are crossed, or if they're pulling their face. But it's interesting that sometimes they themselves are not aware of what they are doing while their partner is speaking. So I will bring awareness to that, or vice versa. The person who is speaking, sometimes they're so busy being lost in their thoughts, they're not noticing how their partner is physically reacting to either their tone or to the content of the message. So raising awareness around the physicality of what's going on in any given situation. I've even had couples, I'll say, okay, freeze. And then in that moment, while both of them freeze, I have them pay attention to what their body's doing, the positions, and also have them track what they are feeling right there in that moment. And it's a really helpful tool for everybody involved to kind of get a better feel of the emotions of the situation.
I really like that. I'm going to use that in my work with couples so that, right, when they're in the middle of having some kind of stressful thing with each other, I love that freeze. What's going on for you in this moment, and I'm sure people say, I'm not breathing, I'm feeling tense, or like John Gottman talks about in his work, feeling flooded, right? This can help people with flooded emotions.
Very much so. I'm glad you brought that up because I do talk a lot about the nervous system when I'm helping people understand how I work. And even something like anxiety is an indicator that our nervous system is overloaded in that moment. So having people understand that visualization of, oh, right now my heart's beating fast and my palms are sweaty. This means I'm on overload. What can I do to return my nervous system to some kind of equilibrium? I like to use the example of fight or flight, which most people are familiar with. Well, in times past, that would help us if a saber-toothed tiger was coming after us. We're either going to fight it or we're going to flee. And so anxiety in the present world, we're thinking that there's a tiger. So first of all, where is the tiger? Do I need to fight it? And if there is no tiger, what somatic techniques have I learned in session that will allow me to leave fight or flight and return to the parasympathetic, the rest, repose, so that I can make better decisions in this moment? So I do use a lot of education on how the nervous system works.
That's so important. And helping people be self-aware rather than what normally happens in relationship is I'm trying to get my partner to say and be and do something different so that I can feel better. This is more about holding yourself accountable.
Accountable and also being more engaged in the outcome, taking authorship or ownership of what's going on in the moment.
I love that. How does it work? And does it work differently when someone comes in and they're trying to recover from something traumatic in their life, some sexual trauma, physical trauma, anything that might have happened to them in a trauma way?
Oh, yes. Again, a great question. Because for some people who have experienced trauma, going to the body is scary. And so for some, that's not the way to start off. I more or less, again, get their story. And then I will ask them how they feel while telling me what's going on. And I will often relate what they're feeling again to the nervous system overload. And then, but every step along the way, I really just invite them to see, how does it feel when you're telling me about this story? How does it feel when I ask you to drop into the body and perhaps pay attention to your heartbeat? And if they respond that, oh, I can't feel anything, or if they even look like, this is not a place to go, we will back off from going to the body because we do want to help them feel safe at all times.
That's awesome. I talk about with clients too that memories can live in your body. Do you know what I mean? So one time I remember this in my 30s that I was watching television and there was a very scary movie on that my mother, I have no idea why she did this to this day, but she took my sister and I and my aunt to, and it was not for kids. I should have never been there. It was, I think I was 8 years old. And when it became to the scary scenes, she would put her hand over my eyes, but I still saw and I still heard. It was awful. So anyways, the movie was on. I'm like, I'm going to watch this. I want to see what this movie really was for me as an 8-year-old. And I was alone. I was downstairs. My husband was upstairs sleeping, and I started feeling afraid. My heart started beating pretty rapidly. I felt like somebody might want to be coming through the window. And I didn't know what was happening to me. And the next day I spoke with a therapist friend and they said, you were having body memories. That's probably how you felt in your body sitting there watching the movie. What would you say about that?
Exactly. And that's what I do tell people, that anxiety is a body memory of a time you felt helpless. And it's also a fear that you might feel helpless again in the future. I do use a lot of language around what the body remembers. My background is a massage therapist. I've been a massage therapist for 23 years.
Mm-hmm.
And even when I was a massage therapy instructor, we would talk about issues in the tissues. How
Wait, I love that. Issues in the tissues. That's perfect.
Yes. Because what would happen in massage sometimes, you're working on a client, and they might all of a sudden start crying, or they might tense up. And what it is you went over an area of the body where they were holding a memory of some emotion. And so it's the body is just so amazing. So we would have to teach therapists how to be in the moment with the client. So I use that background when I'm working with therapy patients or mental health clients to understand that, yes, your body does remember certain things. And I also use the analogy, let's say you're angry at your partner, but it's not the appropriate time to give voice to what you're saying. Well, when you hold things back, what do you hold them back with? And the answer is going to be facial muscles or tension in the neck. So we actually withhold things with our physical body. And if we never get around to processing them at the right time or in a place that's safe, that stuff is just stuck. And it could come out when you don't expect it, or it might manifest as depression, as anxiety. So just bringing the awareness again to the body-mind connection, I think is so helpful, because talk therapy is wonderful, but I think you can work faster when you combine talk therapy with working somatically.
So for you, it made total sense to be drawn to somatic therapy because you were already a body kind of therapist doing massage therapy.
Exactly. I've been a holistic practitioner for a long time.
And, people don't know this about you, but I think they should know too that you're also getting psychoanalytically trained. You're doing a lot of different trainings, even now, though you're out of school.
I'll never be out of school. Even though I have a paper that says I'm out of school, I will always be adding, because there's so much to learn. If I combine both the psychotherapy world with my somatic training, there's just this big world in between that I'm still learning and growing. I'm also studying right now for yoga therapy. I'm going to add that also to my title, because
oh my gosh. Wow.
because again, that's that body-mind connection, and just learning how to be in the body, how to help someone else learn how to be in the body. And as you mentioned, I am being psychoanalytically trained, because there's just so much to learn.
I love psychoanalytic thinking. I always wanted to do that training, and then I became busy in all the other things I did. But I mean, I'd go to different seminars here and there, but it just makes so much sense. It's not the end-all answer, but it helps people dig deep into why and where things may have come from for them. Doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. With psychoanalytic training or psychodynamic training, like what I have and what I'm continuing to do, we're looking at how your past influences your present behavior, and also how unconscious processes sometimes manifest in your current behavior. So that's a beneficial way of looking at how a person might have sexual issues or anxiety or depression, and how it affects them today.
In my Imago relationship therapy, we talk about returning to the scene of the crime, we call it, right? So you're recycling the past and the present. And a lot of clients come in and say, well, I don't want to get stuck in the past. I don't want you to, go there and then, make me stay in therapy forever around that. And I always say to them, if you're recycling the past and the present, you're already stuck in the past.
That's a very, very good way to put it. And I also add to that we have imprints from our childhood that affect our thoughts and decision making today. So it's always helpful to analyze those imprints and see how they are in our present.
I like that a lot. I'm thinking back to sex therapy, right? So someone comes in, and a lot of times people have performance issues. I hate to even say performance. As sex therapists, we're always looking at the language and changing it. But as people are engaging in sexual behaviors, they tend, if they have anxiety or depression or some other issue, they can lose erotic focus. So I would imagine somatic therapy helps them in their bodies stay in the erotic realm. Is that how that would work?
Yes. And I like to look at this as how embodied, literally in your body, are you? So if someone is worried about, we don't like the word performance, but this is the language that people are familiar with. If they're worried about that, or impressing their partner, so their thoughts are really going outward. But by using somatic therapy, we can help the person become more embodied and really stay, as you mentioned, learn how to stay in their erotic experience, learn how to explore their wonderful potential that they might be missing because they're worried about performing or pleasing their partner. So yes, somatic therapy is good for that.
Yeah, and I love that, mixing all these different types. People think, and our culture has gotten to the point where they're going to therapy around specific trainings, and it really isn't about the training. It's about your relationship with the therapist and how they integrate all the trainings. And the more trainings we get, we don't have to be certified in everything, but the more exposure we get to different types of therapy, the more we can be helpful to clients. And I would imagine that's true for you.
Absolutely. And that is why I pursued psychodynamic training, because the word dynamic means moving. And so a person may come in for treatment, but being trained dynamically means I can move with them. I can hear their story, as I like to say, assess what it is that they're looking for help with. And then dynamically, we can move in a direction using whatever training that I've had that will be most beneficial for them. That way it's not prescriptive from the beginning, but it's more like, let's co-create and let's take a look at what you need and work to achieve it together.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then they can leave with tools, leave with something you gave them rather than, people will always ask me at the end of sessions, so what's my homework, and what kind of homework do you give people around somatic therapy?
I'm going to sum it up in one sentence. I say, go to the body. I have one lady that I'm working with. She came in with a lot of childhood trauma, neglect, really. And so she was what we call disembodied. She was trying to make decisions, but she was in a constant state of anxiety and rage. But we started looking at what does your body do when you're raging or before you're raging. So after working with her for a few months, she'll come to sessions. She'll say, well, this happened this week, but I did my homework. I went to the body and I checked in to see, is this good for me? Do I need to make a change? So the homework that I give is around helping them utilize this tool of their own body that's with them all the time. So being in better relationship with themselves.
So let me ask you this, that what if someone doesn't like their body? I feel my fat. I feel my clothes pressing up against me. I don't like, and they start thinking about things they don't like about their body. Then what?
What came to mind for me was mindfulness. So I go back to, we look at what it is that they don't like, and then we look at, perhaps we can even just come to neutral about certain parts of your body. Because if a person raises awareness around the moment they place a value judgment, meaning positive or negative, on a body part or some feeling they have about their body, just being aware that they are doing this and that there is an alternative, that's usually the direction that I go with someone who doesn't like their body. Because if we go straight to, well, look at all the wonderful things your body does for you, they're not there. They're not there. So it's more helpful to come to a place of non-judgment before we start looking at how beneficial and wonderful their body is. I hope that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. What if someone bumps into something negative though, and they can't get past it? If they connect to their body and they have a memory of some kind of abuse or touch or inappropriateness, or the same thing, they don't like something about their body and they start, hyper focusing on it.
That makes me think we need to look at the sensations that arise around this memory. And again, it boils down to nervous system overload and how we can, in those moments, calm the overactivity of the nervous system. And I find that a lot of times when people start to understand the physiology of what's happening, they kind of step back from this being 100% emotionally driven. They say, oh, my body is doing this or my body is doing that. And again, it helps separate from the emotion. And then the tools that we work with around calming the body are really helpful for processing or encoding these traumatic memories so that they don't have as much a charge.
I like it because people then, you're not telling people they have to go, a lot of times the homework would be go work out, go do yoga, go, something physical, join a sports team. A lot of people either they're not ready to do that. They don't want to do that. So this is portable. They can do this anywhere.
Oh, exactly. And that's what I do tell them about the tools that we work with of tracking the body. You can do this anywhere. You can learn to be mindful and not judgmental in any situation. You don't have to go sit on a meditation cushion and put your hands in prayer.
Yeah.
You can go to the body anytime, any place.
What else do you think that I haven't asked you about in terms of somatic therapy, since we're talking about that today, is important for listeners to know? Anything that, like, the clients you've worked with, or even within yourself, that you think, people might find this surprising, or, might find it different than what they thought it might be?
I do hear from people, as far as what it's different from what they expected. They're coming in for traditional therapy, or, maybe they've sought out a practitioner for CBT or psychodynamic or whatever the case may be. But the unique style that I use of going to the body along with talk therapy, many people have said, oh, this is not what I expected, or they expected a lot of homework, but the homework that they are given is really easy to integrate into their everyday life. So I think that is the most common thing that I've heard as far as how I work differently. And then the other thing about what people should know is, again, going to the body for some people is scary. So even though I work somatically, my number one goal is for the person to feel safe in session. And so at any point, if there's some uncomfortableness around it, we will move to a type of therapy that is more suited to them. So there's no need to be afraid.
That's a great answer. And, I'm really thinking that one of the things you might do, if when your schedule allows it, is to make some audio audibles for people so they can listen to your voice. Because I'm telling you, I've never realized how soothing it is until we got on this podcast.
That's funny. I just want to put a little plug in for myself. I am a voice actor, so.
Well, you might have told me that one time. What do you mean? What does that mean?
So a voice actor does characters for different things. My area is audiobooks. So there are actually several audiobooks that I've narrated. I've even done one that's mindfulness for kids. I've done a lot of children's books. I tend to get slated that way because of my calm voice.
Oh, I love it.
Yes, but one fun book was an audiobook on mindfulness for kids, because you can teach children from a very early age. And they're more receptive to going to the body when they're young, because that's where our when we're born, we are embodied, we are in touch with ourselves. If a baby needs something, it just cries, or reaches out for attention. You don't see an infant sitting there going, if I cry right now, it might piss my mother off. I mean, they just don't do that. So really, it's about teaching people to go back to the embodied state that they always knew. But somewhere along the way, they've learned these stories that, oh, my body doesn't know. I'll try to figure this out all with my head, or things like that.
And that's good to know. And it makes sense that you would be a voice. What do you call it? A voice actor?
Yes.
Yeah. Uh-huh. How does this particularly relevant for LGBTQ people?
I'm going to say you're asking about somatic therapy.
Yeah, sorry. Yes. I'm all over the place. Sorry.
So one part of somatic therapy uses internal family systems, which is utilizing a systems perspective on viewing the family as an emotional unit. So when working with LGBT community or individuals in the community, the beauty about using both somatic and psychodynamic therapy is we take a look at how they function or functioned in their family, and how it affects their present behavior. And sometimes it's a matter of, I don't want to say healing connections, but looking at how this person can talk about their orientation with their family of origin, coming to some kind of internal peace about it. And so again, going to the body is really helpful for helping the client understand, well, in which situations am I experiencing more anxiety? How do I feel about speaking up for myself in this situation? What is my body saying? So these are ways that I use to help people.
I love it, especially with the LGBT community, because there's so much disowning and burial and suppression and oppression around body issues, particularly, obviously, with the trans community. So this somatic therapy just sounds good for everyone, but particularly for LGBTQ.
Oh, I would agree. I would agree.
Anything else, final thoughts before we finish out this podcast?
I really enjoy working this way. It feels natural. And so anyone who's interested in working with me, I would encourage them to reach out.
I hope they do too. I think, you know how wonderful I think you are. I wouldn't have brought you on if I hadn't from the minute I met you in the presentations. How can people find you if they do want to contact you and connect with you?
So I have a bio on our website at the Center for Relationship and Sexual Health. So calling the office there is the best way to get a hold of me.
Great. And that would be at 248-399-7447. Or they can go to the website and read your bio and see your picture, which is on www.crsh.com. I want to thank you, Charon, for being my guest today and talking about somatic therapy, mindfulness, and how it works with trauma and how it just works in general with depression, anxiety, and as a regular therapy. And if your listeners are listening to me and enjoyed the show today, please don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at Dr. Joe Court. I'll see you next time. Take care and stay safe. Thanks for listening to this episode of Smart Sex, Smart Love. I'm Dr. Joe Court, and you can find me on joecourt.com. That's JoeKort.com. See you next time.